And good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Today is Tuesday, March the 8th. This is 10 a.m. Central Time, where it's time for PLAR History and Geography here at WASA here in Sulagoat. Once again, my name is Jonathan. I am your teacher for this course. We are entering week number 5 of term 2A. So we're more than halfway done this term. So please continue to work on this assignment. Today is International Women's Day, which is fantastic. Happens every year on March the 8th, which is today, which really relates to this course as we explore Canadian history topics. So today, International Women's Day, a day for respect, appreciation for women, for gender equality based on economic, political, social achievement, where we strive to make everyone equal regardless of our gender. If you have been listening throughout the course, you have known that we have explored and talked about Canadian women and their struggles since the early 1900s and how their equality rights has progressed and has significantly changed and improved as time progresses. So again, it really relates to what we're talking about in this course in terms of the history half. Okay? Not much other than to announce. Again, feel free to listen and call in and participate. Again, feel free to always get in touch with me if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Again, give me a call, send me an email, add me as a friend on Facebook. Okay? All that is the same. Are there any questions before we get started in terms of today's class? All right. So today we're starting a brand new lesson, lesson number 3. Lesson number 3 in our textbook and a workbook. Reminder, there are 5 lessons in all, and we're starting lesson number 3 today. Today, we're switching our focus to Canada in the 1960s, but more specifically, we're talking about Quebec separatism. Quebec separatism is what I like to call today's lesson. So by the end of today's class, you'll have an understanding of the significance of the Quiet Revolution, how that started and what that is all about. Quiet Revolution. You will also have an understanding of francophones, movement towards independence, and the involvement of a group called FLQ. Okay, so our focus today is the province of Quebec. Okay, so let's get to our learning goals. So I'll write this out. So our learning goals for today is pretty much like I mentioned. Is the La Province du Quebec, otherwise known as the province of Quebec. So again, our province, our topic today is the province of Quebec. Again, more specifically, what happened in the 1960s in Canada, and more specifically, we're talking about francophones. Who are the francophones? Who are the pretty much a person who speaks French. So this is our goal, this is our topic for today. Again, La Province du Quebec, the province of Quebec in the 1960s. And more specifically, talk about francophones, French-speaking individual or people or person who speaks French. This is our goal today. We're looking at that in terms of our Canadian history timeline. I noticed we got Nancy on the line as well. So hopefully you will get to see where Nancy is from, which community she is from. But hopefully Nancy can hear me. Nancy is from Fort Hope. Excellent. Good morning, Nancy. Again, hope you can.
Sophie.
Oh, Sophie. Hi, Sophie.
Yeah.
Did you write Nancy on your Bridget software, or that's just someone else?
Uh, teacher.
Okay. All right. Perfect. How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Doing good. Excellent. Thank you once again for joining in. So we're on lesson number 3. We're starting the lesson on the Quiet Revolution of Quebec. So in regards, we'll be talking about assignment number 7 at the end of today's class. Assignment number 7 is very, very short. Nothing difficult, nothing too long, but at the end of today's lesson, we'll talk about questions on assignment number 7. And then if we have time, we'll continue looking on the next lesson. Okay? Again, my class, this is our learning goal for today. Francophones. Okay? So, before we dive right into looking at the Quiet Revolution of Quebec in 1960, that started in 1960, I'm going to give the class a bit of background content of what Canada was like in the 1960s. So, Canada in 1960, again, we have a brand new Prime Minister. His name was Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He was in office for in the late 60s to the 70s and even in the early 80s. So he was in the office for quite a number of terms and years. So again, Prime Minister during this time period, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the father of our Prime Minister nowadays, Justin Trudeau. During the 1960s here in Canada, it was a period of change. Again, we're in the time period of the Cold War, where there's tension and conflict between two superpower, as we talked about, one, the United States, and two, the Soviet Union. Okay? So, again, during this time period, it was a period of rejection of traditional values and establishment. Okay? Things started to change. Okay? Rejection of traditional values and establishment. People, Canadians, us, we, people start to challenge authority, challenge of social inequality, and we wanted political change. That was what we desire. Okay, all these changes, challenge and changes led to the status quo. Okay, challenge status quo, found our voice. Okay, as a result of by challenge the status quo of society, we as Canadians started to create our own Canada, our own Canadian society. Okay, lots of changes, lots of challenges of authority and laws and order during this time period. Also during this time period, again, like I mentioned, it was a period of Cold War. We had the Korean War internationally. We had the Vietnam War, which Canada was a part of. Okay, it was also a period of the hippie culture. Okay, we have the establishment of the hippie culture, which was a pretty popular culture during this time period, based on their personal appearance, different in terms of culture, social ideologies, different tastes in music, religion, and activities. Again, they also challenge established society. Okay, again, this hippie culture, again, with their long hair, glasses, bright color clothing. Again, their concerns were mainly women's rights, civil rights, end of war, and environmental protection. Again, this was really popular in Canada in the 1960s, the hippie culture. Again, like I talked about, also in 1960, we had the Vietnam War. Like I said, Canada was a part of it. Canada's role was peacekeeping. Again, what established from that was it demonstrated and it defines Canada as a global peacekeeping participant and a faithful ally to the United States. Okay. So that was pretty much what started to change or what started to transpire here in Canada in the late or in the 1960s. A lot of change, a lot of challenges in terms of social equality and challenges to authority. What also happened in the 1960s was that there were lots of changes. Lots of changes. Okay, on my slide, I noticed a few changes that took place in the 1960s. Again, this is just some additional background material, information that's not in your textbook that I wanted to provide in order to enhance your understanding of what this time period was like at this time. So, 1962, we had the immigration policy reform. Again, here in Canada, we started to search for skilled labor, new people and immigrants who had skill. We started to allow immigrants from Asia to come to Canada based on their skill. 1965, we had the involvement and evolution of the new Canadian flag. The Canadian flag that we see nowadays, the red and white with the maple leaf in the middle, was created in 1965. 1966, national health care. Yes, here in Canada we have national health care, something to take for granted, something that makes Canada stand out from the rest of the world. That was created here in 1966, which benefits all Canadians. Also in 1966, we have the creation of the Canadian Pension Plan. Again, benefits all Canadians as well. And finally, in 1969, we have the Criminal Code reform, where it allowed legalization of abortion and the involvement of homosexuality, changes to that. So again, lots of changes started to emerge in the 1960s based on challenges and based on political and social reforms. All right. As promised, we're going to talk about today the province of Quebec, our neighbor next to Ontario, the province of Quebec. Again, some random facts about Quebec. Quebec is Canada's largest province, hence you can see on my screen, wherever it's outlined in red, that is the province of Quebec. Capital city, Quebec City. Largest city in Quebec, Montreal. Again, huge population or majority of population in Quebec are French speaking or francophones. Okay, there are some English speaking, but majority in the dominant culture in Quebec in the 1960s and even today are French speaking. Hence why it is a French speaking province. Some history of Quebec. Jacques Cartier arrived in 1534, claimed the land from France. Samuel du Chapin set up a colony for New France in 1608. Okay, there was a war known as the 7 Years' War between Britain and France, where Britain captured Quebec City. Later on, Ontario and Quebec was divided into an area known as Upper Canada and Lower Canada. Upper Canada was represented by the English-speaking, and Lower Canada was represented by the French-speaking citizens. Later on, in terms of Confederation, in 1867, when Canada joined Confederation, boom, we have two provinces created, hence why we got Ontario and Quebec, which is what it looks like today. Nowadays, Quebec, the province of Quebec, is known for its hydroelectricity power plants, known for its paper and pulp industry. Famous Canadians that came from Quebec are Celine Dion, musician, and tons of famous Canadian hockey players. For example, Maurice the Rocket Richard, Jean Bellevue, Patrick Roy, and Mario Lemieux. That is Quebec in a little nutshell and how it was created and all that little fun stuff. But let's get started. So let's go back to after World War II. Okay, World War II ended in 1945. So it was a period of change in Quebec. Things started to change again as we progress along our timeline, a lot of things change. Okay, and Quebec, the province of Quebec, was also involved in change as well. There was a dramatic increase in population, economic growth, increase in employment opportunities, decline in religion practices. Radio and television were the new norm and ideas. Okay, because of that technology of the radio and television, Quebec sees the world no longer through a filter by the press, politicians, or the priests. Okay, again, with this new involvement of technology and opportunity, things start to move away from the old school way of living. Okay, things are changing. There's a new opportunity now. So things start to move away from the press, what's being brainwashed by citizens, politicians, and the priests, and the order of the church rule. Things start to change after World War II in Quebec. Eventually, all that change led to nationalism. Quebec nationalism. The roots of Quebec nationalism. Again, we see this word nationalism before. Again, it's a sense of pride based on culture, identity, and who they stand for and who they are. In this case, we're talking about French-speaking identity, okay, based on their nationalism. Okay, French-speaking francophones people. Okay. As you recall, Canada had a long, and I mean long, history of English-speaking and French-speaking individual. Okay, there's always tension between English versus the French. Okay, the English had their own way of living, society, culture, and the French again had their own identity, culture, influences, and way of living. Hence why these two always had tension and often disagreed about how Canada should be run and what it meant and what it means to be Canadian. Okay. French Canadians worry about English Canada influence on their culture and economic. Okay. Again, French Canadians during this time period wanted to maintain their identity. And as we all know, culture, identity, knowing a sense where they come from is a huge pride, and they wanted to maintain that. As a result, Quebec wanted to be its own nation. Ooh. Okay, they wanted to separate from Canada because they have different political views. Remember, Quebec is a province with the majority of its population and citizens are French-speaking. Okay, French-speaking. Okay, because of that, again, like I said, Quebec wanted to be separated from Canada and created its own nation based on its different views and ties and rules and lifestyle. Quebec wanted to be its own. Okay, again, after World War II, Quebec was more modernized, impacted all segments of Quebec, and it really created this nationalist ideology of nationalism. Okay, we wanted to be its own. Time of opportunity, times are changing. We want to move away from old establishments, and as a result of this chance and opportunity in this time period, Quebec wanted to be its own. No more Canada, we want to be its own country. This was the start of Quebec nationalism, which really plays a huge part in terms of creating Canada, in terms of what it means to be Canadian. Okay, so really important, lots of tension, different views. So what happened was that in Quebec there was an MP who was the premier of the province of Quebec, not the prime minister, but the premier who overrules or runs the province of Quebec just in general, and his name was Maurice Duplessis. Maurice Duplessis. He was the leader of the Union Nationale Party of Quebec, wanted what was best for the province of Quebec. He wanted private enterprise, low taxes, the Catholic Church, old established order, American investments, opposed a labor union, and he later eventually died in office. What made Maurice Duplessis significant was that all these rules and what he wanted and what he envisioned was influence from Britain or American. Okay, it had this old establishment where things were run by the Catholic Church, old investments. This is what his lifestyle and what his choice and what his views were like for the province of Quebec during his time in office. Okay, again, when Maurice Duplessis was in office, the premier of Quebec, all his political and economic and social change and reforms was based on Britain, based on the old Catholic Church, based on American influences and investments, and all that, which was really different in terms of how French-speaking Canadians view themselves. Okay, this was really significant. This was different. This was different. As a result of this old lifestyle choice by Duplessis, a lot of leaders oppose Duplessis and his views. Okay, a lot of political motivated people oppose Duplessis, intellectual community, some clergy, union leaders, and even Union National Party considered corrupted by many. Okay, a lot of corruption, a lot of pointing fingers, not a lot of agreement, not pleasing the people based on what Duplessis had in mind. Okay, mainly based on intelligence, political motivated people who had power and wanted to see change. Wanted to see change. They wanted to see protection and influence of their own culture, which is the French-speaking society. So what happened? As you know, like I said, Maurice Duplessis died in office. So boom, this guy came in along. And his name was Jean Lesage. Jean Lesage. Lesage eventually was elected as the new premier of Quebec, and he promised change. Change for the Quebec people, change for the francophones, change for the French-speaking Canadian society. He promised change. He ended, when he was in office, when he was premier, he ended electoral corruption. He established the Ministry of Education, reconstructed the secondary school system for Quebec. He re-revised the labor union, public sector, the right to strike, provincial hospitalization plan, and federal tax back to the province of Quebec. Okay, so all these reforms and changes that was created by Lesage were heavily influenced by what Quebec citizens wanted and how it really influenced Quebec wanted to be its own nation. Okay, again, Lesage promised change. He did all this. Again, ended electoral corruption, established Ministry of Education, reconstructed the secondary school system based on courses students have to take and what not to take based on French system. Revised the labor code, public sector, the right to strike, provincial hospitalization plan, and federal tax back to the province of Quebec. He did all this based on being different from Quebec. However, change wasn't enough, or change wasn't happening quick enough. People were not happy, and pretty much this led to something known as the Quiet Revolution. Okay, which is pretty much the main topic of today's class. The Quiet Revolution, which took place between 1960 to 66, a 6-year time period. Okay, so class, make sure you know what the Quiet Revolution is, how it started, what led to it, and why it's significant. Okay, so the Quiet Revolution was a period of rapid and non-violent change responsible for the beginning of a more secularized Quebec. Okay, a period of rapid and non-violent change responsible for the beginning of a more modernized Quebec. Again, people were not happy with the changes or the rate of changes was happening. Okay, people, the French speaking, I'm trying to talk about people, wanted to see faster change in order to protect their culture and identity. Okay, so why was it called the Quiet Revolution? Often in history, when we see the word revolution, it often means an uprise of people, the majority, overruling, violence, battles, killing, overruling the government. Okay, this was not really quite the case, hence why it was called the Quiet Revolution. The reason why it was called the Quiet Revolution because it was not achieved through guns and forces and violence, but it was achieved through magazines and newspaper articles to change political legislation. Okay, a lot of it was done through the media, a lot of protesting, a lot of article writing in order to change political legislation. Again, Quebec citizens wanted to protect their culture and identity. Again, they have a different culture and mindset and way of living based on the English speaking, the majority. Quebec often felt discriminated against socially, politically, and economically. Okay? They were not treated the same because they had different views because they were French speaking. Again, the majority, the dominant were the English speaking, and often Quebec felt discriminated against socially, culturally, politically, and economically. Okay? This was what the main factors and the reason behind the start of the Quiet Revolution. Because of the Quiet Revolution, what it did was that it ended social influence from the Catholic Church. Again, when Maurice Duplessis was premier of Quebec, a lot of his influence and ties were from the Catholic Church, Britain, Americans, and all that. Okay, because of that, because of the Quiet Revolution, it ended all that. No more influence from the Catholic Church. There's an increase in francophones' confidence, sense of pride. Okay, going back to the notion of nationalism. Okay, because of this revolution, there was a much greater ever sense of nationalism. Francophones, French-speaking, started to challenge the Anglo status quo, which is the English society. They started to challenge government, establishments, order, and society. Okay, a lot of challenges came out from the Quiet Revolution. Again, for some, based on the Quiet Revolution, some were still not happy. Some were still unsatisfied with what is being happened based on the Quiet Revolution, based on all the articles and media and press, based on what they want to see change. Some were still not happy. Some were still not happy. As a result of these disappointing results, Quebec's separatism grew bitter. Okay, people in Quebec who wanted to see changes, they grew bitter. They were angry. They were not happy. As a result, boom, we had a group called the Front de la Libération du Québec, otherwise known as the FLQ. Okay, the FLQ started to set bombs and explosives around the city of Montreal. The FLQ took actions even further by kidnapping key political figures such as James Cross, British Trade Commissioner, and Pierre Laporte, who was the Deputy Premier of Quebec. Laporte was eventually killed by the FLQ, which led to our Prime Minister Trudeau, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, to invoke the War Measures Act in order to restore peace and order. Okay, so who were the FLQ? Well, they were pretty much a group of individuals of terrorists or terrorism or acts of violence and terrorists. Okay, they felt violence was the only way to win Quebec's independence. Okay, things were not changing. They wanted change at much faster, but it wasn't happening. They were upset. So boom, they took actions and matters in their own hands on their own terms. and felt violence was the only way to win Quebec's independence. Hence why there was bombing, kidnapping of key political figures, and like I said, Laporte was eventually killed by the FLQ. Okay, so make sure you understand who the FLQ were and what they did. Bombing and kidnapping, striking fear in society. These were the FLQ. Front de la Liberation du Quebec. Like I said, what transpired, what happened was that, like I said, Laporte was eventually killed by the FLQ, what led to Pierre Trudeau, to invoke the War Measures Act in order to restore peace and order. So, let's get to the War Measures Act. The War Measures Act. And what was it? This was the first time in history that the War Measure Act has been used during peaceful time. The War Measure Act allows the government to arrest and detain any suspect that seems to be involved in threats towards national security. Trudeau began to take pressure from the press about the arrests of suspects and potential FLQ affiliates, which climaxed it on the steps of Parliament building. There was a CBC reporter named Tim Raphael. He was a news reporter for CBC. He pretty much pushed the microphone in front of Trudeau and suggested that the government officials should leave themselves open to kidnapping and murder in the name of individual rights. Trudeau, our Prime Minister, basically responded by saying, "All I can say is go on and bleed, but it is more important to keep law and order in society than to be worried about weak-kneed people who don't like the looks." The CBC reporter Tim Ralph then challenged Trudeau by saying, "At any cost, how far would you go?" Trudeau simply smiled and said, "Well, just watch me." Okay, so pretty much the War Measure Act was an act that basically was invoked, which basically suspended all Canadian citizens' legal and independent and fundamental rights. Basically, you can be arrested and detained without any charges. Okay, if there was any suspicions or reasonable cause, you can be arrested and detained for that matter. Okay, there's no it's buts saying, "Oh, I didn't do it. I was innocent." No, okay, you can be arrested and detained without any charges during this peaceful time. This demonstrated that Trudeau would go to great length in order to stop the FLQ and to protect society from natural threats. If the FLQ had succeeded in their mission, it would have meant that Quebec would be separated from Canada's Confederation and creating its own distinct nation. Trudeau did not want this to occur because it would not have meant his meaning of a just society, where everyone is equal and united as one. The War Measure Act brought a mixed reaction among Canadians. Many reacted to the usage of the War Measures Act by stating that the act was an attack on democracy. Even though the act did not target any particular ethnic groups, French Canadians were seen to be the greater public as a more likely group to be targeted, since the FLQ was a French terrorist group. Again, the War Measure Act is controversial because it allows the government to suspend individual civil rights and liberty. Okay, so that right there is pretty much what the whole crisis, and whether you agree or disagree about using the War Measures Act. Okay, again, it suspended individual legal rights, fundamental rights, and liberty as a citizen to live peacefully. And it was done in order to stop the FLQ, which worked. Eventually, all that fallout, we had a new premier in the province of Quebec. His name was Rene Levesque, he created a new political ideology party based on the Quebecois, Parti Quebecois, that emerged from the crisis of the Quiet Revolution. However, Canadians continue to discuss the role of Quebec within the nations today. This is the outcome of the Quiet Revolution. Canadians, we continue to discuss the role of Quebec within our nation, Canada, today. What are their roles specifically? Later on in Canadian history, last moves later on, there was two referendum that took place. A referendum, there was an actual vote where Canadians get to voice their opinion and voted on this referendum on whether or not the province of Quebec will be separated from Canada. Okay, all this talk about the Quiet Revolution, Quebec nationalism is significant because all of this tension and conflict about maintaining their ideology and identity led to this referendum, this key point in Canadian history. This referendum, like I said, it allowed Canadians to vote on whether or not Quebec will be separated from Canada and form its own distinct identity and nation away from Canada. Eventually, the results were no. Okay, like a slim 50s point something percent voted no. Quebec will not be separated from Canada. Okay, hence why Quebec nowadays is still part of Canada. Okay, however, based on the referendum, if the vote was reversed and the majority voted yes, Quebec wanted to be separated or should be separated, it would be a whole different story nowadays. But based on the referendum, about 50 point something, around 51% voted no. Quebec would not be separated or should not be separated from Quebec. Hence why Canada and its provinces and our territories look the way it is today. Okay? So that's pretty much today's lesson. So right now, let's get to assignment number 7. Assignment number 7. Like I said, assignment number 7 is a pretty short lesson. There's only 2 questions. Okay, it doesn't get any better and sweeter than that. Okay, 2 more questions. Okay, 2 questions, sorry, out of 8 marks. Okay, question number 1. Provide specific details to describe the Quiet Revolution. Why was the revolution necessary to the people of Quebec? And what did various political leaders do in support of this revolution? Okay, and that is out of 5 marks. Okay, so I'm looking for a lot of details in terms of this question. Details, key details. So what was going on in Quebec during this time period? What did francophones wanted in order to protect and maintain? Okay, and what was the significance, what was the purpose of the Quiet Revolution? For example, why was it called Quiets? Who was involved? Okay, give us some key political figures that were key and played a role in this revolution. Okay, details, and details. Okay, for this question. Again, what led to the Quiet Revolution? How it started? What it was? And who were involved? What were the factors of the Quiet Revolution? Question number 2. What was the FLQ? And briefly describe it as an organization. Name 2 things. 2 things that the FLQ were responsible for doing. Okay, so tell me who was the FLQ? What were they in terms of a group, in terms of an organization? Okay, what did they want to do? And name 2 things that the FLQ were responsible for doing. Okay, hunting, bombing, and kidnapping. But who? Okay, were responsible for doing. Okay, again, simple, straightforward 2 questions based on simply giving me details and what led to the Quiet Revolution and what that is all about. And the second question mainly deals with the FLQ. Who were they? What did they want to do or establish? And name me 2 things that they were responsible for doing. Okay, that's out 3 marks. Simple, 8 marks right there. 2 questions, 8 marks, assignment number 7. Okay? Are there any questions? Are there any confusions? Are there anything that the class would like me to go over? Sophie, are you still there in Fort Hope?
Yep.
Perfect, okay. Are you done assignment 4, 5, and 6 yet?
I'm just doing number 4, but I've done 5 and 6. The other assignments, I just need to.
Okay, perfect. And did you send that in to me yet?
No, I'm not yet.
Okay. Well,
Well,
if
I
you
was gonna wait till I do number 4.
okay, no worries. Again, whenever you're done number 4, feel free to scan it or give it to your DC to scan it, fax it to me, email it to me, many ways. Okay. Are there any questions that you're stuck on assignment number 4, Sophie? Oh, what's the
Not
song?
really. I think it's pretty straightforward. Just that I just haven't had time to do anything at home.
Oh, okay. Yeah, assignment number 4 deals with World War II. Talks about what was the reason for Canadians joining the Second World War, Arsenal Democracy, Camp X, Prime Minister Mackenzie King, and the constituent objectors. So pretty straightforward. Again, I know everyone has busy lives and things going on in terms of family and work in their communities, and I understand that. But don't give up. Just continue to work on it. Okay, so if you're doing a great job, you're coming to class pretty much all the time, which is fantastic. So keep that up. And again, if you do have any questions or if you're stuck on anything, feel free to send me an email, Facebook message, and just ask. Okay, remember, I'm here to help. My goal is to help. So remember that. Okay.
Alright.
All right. So also, Sophie, you can also start assignment number 7 too. Again, simple 2 questions. I'm looking for a lot of details. But when we get a chance, make sure you finish assignment number 4 first, and then you can start assignment number 7. Other than that, you're almost done. Okay. And the last assignment is assignment number 8. Once you've done all that, you can write the history test. Because from what I recall, all you need is the history half. You don't need to do the geography portion. I think you already have that credit. Okay, so you're almost done. So keep it up. Remember, right? It's only 8 assignments in terms of the history portion, it's history half. So you're more than halfway done. So just really work hard on finishing up those last 2, 3 assignments. And once I mark all that, which won't take long, and if all is good and to go and no problems, you can write your tests. You can do that really soon within the next few weeks if you're really eager to get that done. Okay, so just keep that in mind and keep up the good work. Okay, Sophie?
Okay.
And that goes along to everyone as well. Okay, so again, I know, like I said, everyone's at different stages, whether you're following along with me or you're moving ahead or slightly behind, all that is okay, as long as you continue to finish up your assignments. Reminder, next week is March break. Okay, so there's no classes at all here at WASA next week. It's March break. So again, really work hard the next couple of days for the rest of the week to work on those assignments, submit them to me, and then maybe you can get a little break. We'll continue to work on it. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So that's pretty much today's class. We do have a bit of time left, so I might start a few slides on the very last lesson. Okay. Again, I'm still on assignment number 3. And this next lesson, which I'll start a few slides, and we'll finish it off next class on Thursday. Okay. Like I promised, we'll finish up history half this week. And if we have time, which we probably will, on Thursday, we will start the second portion of this course, which is geography. Okay? So let's keep that all in mind. So continue.
Geography too, or?
What's that, Sophie?
Oh, I thought I was on mute.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have a question? You're all good?
Yeah, I'm all good. I was asking if I had to take geography too, if I already had that.
From what I remember, what I saw on my spreadsheets and all my data, is that you only need to do the history half, which means that you only need to do the history assignments. Okay? But I will double check that and I'll let you know. However, you can do geography too. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay? By completing all 4 PLAR sections, okay, which is English, math, science, and my section, history and geography, you can get an additional free credit and add it to your transcript. Okay, so there are some benefits of doing all assignments in terms of history and geography, but that's up to you. Okay, if you already have the geography credit, you don't need to do it, but it's your choice. Okay, but you do need to do the history, which is what you're working on, which is fantastic. But you don't need to do the geography section. Okay, but I'll double check that once I get back to my office. Okay. Okay. Good stuff. All right. So again, we have maybe a few minutes left in class, so maybe I'll start the next 2 slides of the last lesson. Again, I will review this next class on Thursday so that we're not rushing or zipping through everything as well. But this last lesson in regards to assignment number 8, we'll deal with the Canada Act and free trade. Okay, the Canada Act and a free trade. We're pretty much in the 1980s right now. So we're in the 19. Ooh, that won't be good. So let's try that. So we're pretty much in the 1980s to the 2000 period, or modern day Canada in terms of the 21st century. Okay, the Canada Act and a free trade. So in terms of this lesson, pretty straightforward. Our learning goals are looking at what is the Canada Act. We're looking at free trade. And at the end of this lesson, we're talking about women as well. Women in politics. Okay, so pretty short lesson, nothing too difficult in terms of this lesson. But since we have time, why not start it? So the Canada Act. Again, like I said, we're in the 1980s right now. Okay, the Canada Act, also known as the Constitution Act. The Constitution Act of Canada. It was signed on April 17th, 1982. Okay, it's known as the Canada Act. It was involvement from the BNA Act, the British North American Act, also known as the Constitution Act. Okay, Canada Act, Constitution Act, they mean the same thing. This is really significant in terms of what we can do as Canada as a country. With the Constitution Act signed by Britain and Canada, it gives Canada complete control over its constitution without Britain's permission. Okay, now there are no limitation, no limits in terms of what we can do in Canada as a country in terms of what we want. Okay, we can change laws, we can do this, do that, make changes without Britain's permission. We're still part of British colony. Well, that will always be a part of Canadian history, but we are now our own country. No more limitation, no more permission. We're all grown up now. We can do what we like. Okay, and this is from the Canada Act or the Constitution Act of 1982. In this Constitution Act, it includes the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. As you recall from last week, where there was a slide and a lesson on the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, where it outlines Canadians' legal and fundamental rights as a citizens. Okay, that is all entrenched into the Constitution. Okay, it applies to all citizens. We have legal rights, democratic rights, equality rights, no more discrimination based on race, gender, etc. All that is now embedded into the Constitution. Okay, how do we change the Constitution? Well, that's pretty difficult. There are a lot of steps and forms in order to do it, but the main point is that Canada can do whatever we want without Britain's permission. Okay? All provinces signed on to this Constitution Act and agreed to it in terms of Canada, except for one. Except for one. And if you have guessed Quebec, boom, you are correct. Quebec, like always, did not sign, did not really cooperate. Okay, however, it still applied to Quebec citizens, even though Quebec as a province did not sign along with the Constitution Act. Okay, again, the Constitution Act applied across Canada, all provinces, all territories, even though Quebec did not sign it. Okay, they're still a part of it. Okay, this is the Constitution Act. So what happened since Quebec did not sign along was that we have an act that came along known as the Meech Lake Accord. Meech Lake Accord of 1987. Brian Mulroney, a name you probably may never heard of or probably won't recognize, he was at one point the Prime Minister of Canada. Mulroney wanted to please Quebec since Quebec did not sign the Constitution Act. Okay, with the Meech Lake Accord, it basically recognized Quebec as a distinct, separate society, saying that, hey, if you sign the Meech Lake Accord, Quebec, you can be recognized as a distinct, separate society from Canada. Okay, this was the way to please Quebec. This was the way to get Quebec to sign in the Constitution so that we can all be united as one nation. However, obviously that did not happen. A man named Elijah Harper. Elijah Harper was an MP in the province of Manitoba, and he was an Aboriginal, and he fought for Aboriginal rights and for the voice. He basically said it and argued, hey, if Quebec was treated as a distinct society, why can't we? Now, when I said we, we're talking about First Nations, Indigenous, Aboriginal people. Okay? So it's kind of unfair. If Quebec was being recognized as a distinct society, why can't First Nation be recognized as a distinct society as well, based on their culture, political, social, economic status, and different lifestyle and influences as well? Like I said, hence why the Meech Lake Accord was never passed. It never happened. It never happened. Okay? I'm going to stop it here for today. We're going to continue wrapping up this lesson and assignment number 8 next class. I can say